Welcome to Candidate Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2016, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication with support from AARP. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This conversation, taped on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for U.S. House, and we are joined by Democrat Bryan Townsend. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Well, first off, we want to ask you, what in your background do you feel separates you from the other candidates running that makes you better suited for the job?
Well, I'm the only candidate in the race the past several years who's been at the forefront of helping to address some of the biggest issues facing Delaware and the country. The addiction epidemic, I've done legislation to treat addiction more as a medical issue and not a criminal one. Over testing in our schools, I've pushed back against that. Investment in infrastructure, I've helped lead the charge on that. So you can pick your policy area, and I've been working on legislation the past several years to address that in Delaware, and I'm prepared to do the same in Washington.
None of the candidates in the field this year, yourself included, have ever been elected to a statewide office. That's often seen as a prerequisite for a tiered office like this, the U.S. Senate, U.S. House, I should say. What would you say to a voter who's concerned about your experience and being able to go in and get things done in Congress?
Well, I think it's very important to take a look at what people have been doing to address different issues, especially in the past several years. A lot of people are faced with tough issues right now, tough times with the economy, with the pressures in education, with funding, with Social Security and cost of living not being included, cost of living adjustments. There are a whole lot of issues people are facing. So it's really important to take a look at what have people done with any political influence that they've had before. And so, although none of the candidates in this race have been elected statewide before, the fact is only one of us have shown the ability and the willingness to really tackle tough issues in a diverse legislature and get things done. So that's a very important aspect of this race.
And obviously getting things done in Washington has been pretty difficult in recent years. If elected, what do you plan to do to help kind of bridge that partisan divide in D.C.?
Well, I think Delaware is an extremely important platform to be able to do that because of our diversity. With its biotech sector, research institutions, banks, law firms, agriculture, tourism, Air Force Base. Delaware has all of these different components, and so going down to D.C., any issue that comes up is going to impact Delawareans. Any issue that comes up will enable me to talk to my colleagues down in Washington about how what impacts their constituents also impacts mine. Having that basis, a real basis of shared constituencies, is an important bridge to actually be able to work together in these very, very partisan times.
Concerns about creating and retaining jobs here in Delaware has been front and center this year, particularly in the wake of the Dow-DuPont merger. What steps would you take if you were elected to help boost economic growth, raise wages, create jobs in the first state and elsewhere in the country?
Well, I think Delaware has undergone some very, very difficult economic times. It's sort of the bigger they are, the harder they fall type of outcome. We had a very robust private sector, blue-collar jobs, auto manufacturing, DuPont, AstraZeneca, and we've seen a lot of that downsize or go away. But in that challenge lies opportunity. We have very hard-working blue-collar workforce. We have a lot of R&D talent and science talent in the transition from DuPont. So it's really a matter of using the congressional office with available funding, but also public stature to be able to convene different groups. You put the right pieces together, and there's actually opportunity right now with DuPont leaving. A lot of research talents available. A lot of blue-collar families are awaiting investment in infrastructure. There's ways of kickstarting our economy again here by investing in infrastructure, investing in R&D, developing public-private partnerships along with non-for-profits and education institutions to put these families back to work.
This summer has been a difficult summer on many streets across the country and in cities. A number of high-profile incidents of police shooting individuals, police officers being shot as well. That's raised tensions between law enforcement and many of the communities that they serve in. If you're elected, how can you help deal with this issue and kind of rebuild a trust that seems to be a bit broken, at least in some areas?
We seem to be living in unprecedented times in terms of police and community relations. It's just tragic seeing police targeted and killed. It's tragic seeing individual citizens die during police encounters. It's a combination of making sure that throughout the year, every single day, there are good police-community relations. And community policing is so much at the forefront right now of what we know we have to do more of in Delaware. Additionally, there's the issue of making sure that the police force is comprised and reflects the community in which it serves, making sure that all officers have de-escalation training as part of that. And as a son of a police officer, my father was a police officer for 30 years, I'm very aware of the sacrifice that officers make when they suit up every day and go on their shift. Making sure they come home safe is paramount, and making sure that they have trust in the community and are able to work with the community is something that we can do both through the laws and funding that we pass, but also facilitating the public conversation. These are very sensitive issues. You have to have political leaders being willing to engage the issues, engage the public, and really sort out the very tense feelings that everyone has.
There's also the issue of terrorism, security threats today, both domestic and international. How difficult is it, and what can you do to help both keep America safe and keep America free, which sometimes are at odds?
Well, we're seeing threats outside of America, and then in many ways through the digital warfare that ISIS is waging, we see threats bubbling up inside of America. I think it's a few things. I think making sure to disrupt networks where they exist outside our borders is certainly critical. Striking at the heart of these groups is something we have to do in coordination with other countries, both in the Middle East and across Europe and across the world. We all have a stake in making sure that the globe is peaceful. And then within the United States, we have to make sure that we combat that digital warfare, that there is no young American who ever feels that he or she has more in common with terrorists than they do with their own neighbors. So right now, there are certain elected officials who are using language to drive wedges between communities in the United States. We've got to come together as communities. Some of this is religiously motivated, although I think it's a perversion of the religion. And then a lot of it you see is actually mental instability that manifests itself in mass shootings. We've got to come together as communities, large and small, to really look out for one another and see these signs of people who feel disaffected, see these signs of people who feel frustrated, and make sure they get the care they need.
I want to talk about immigration. It also remains a key issue. What is your position on undocumented immigrants in the U.S. and America opening its doors to those who are refugees from war-torn countries like Syria?
So America is a country of immigrants. We always have been. We always should be. It's what makes America beautiful in so many ways. My wife is a first-generation American. She was born in Vietnam and grew up in the San Jose, California area and moved there when she was 5 years old. Her family is a living, breathing example of the American dream. 4 children, all worked tremendously hard. Parents worked very hard to raise them, very low income, and were able to build a prosperous family. We shouldn't depart from that. And again, the political rhetoric of some individuals is really abandoning fundamental American principles. We need all the talent we can get, all the hard work that we can get. That said, we've got to have comprehensive immigration reform. We should have secure borders. We should know who's coming into our country. We should know who's overstaying their legal status. But part of the challenge is that for decades, we've known that the system was broken. We didn't do anything to fix it. So now you have families who've been here for decades, many years, who work here, worship here, have helped build the community, are members of the community. We've got to draw a line now. Comprehensive reform that keeps families together, keeps America strong, and secures our borders. In regards to the Syrian refugee crisis, I think it was very unfortunate that individuals in D.C. Played on people's fears and distorted the truth that the refugee screening process is the strictest we have on the books. There are many other holes in our security, many other holes in our immigration laws, including business visas or tourist visas. We can go after that as ways of securing our country. The fact of the matter is, on the refugee side, it's already the toughest screening processes that we have in place. I think it was an unfortunate political moment in D.C. that played on people's fears rather than embracing the true role of immigration in our country.
I want to finish on education. President Obama has proposed making 2 years of community college free for all Americans. Where do you stand on that issue and, I guess more broadly, the federal government's role in education from pre-K all the way through college?
So actually, I'm very happy to announce we just learned a few minutes ago that I've been endorsed by the Delaware State Education Association for the congressional campaign. And that's because education has been at the forefront of my public service the past 4 years in the state Senate, really pushing back against the over-testing of children driven in much by the federal level and trying to make sure that resources get into the classroom, that flexibility is afforded for educators to be able to adapt and teach each child based on his or her own unique needs and interests. At the federal level, there are several key things. Pre-K funding, we have to expand. In a knowledge-based economy, kids have got to arrive to kindergarten ready to learn. And too often they're not able to, especially because of poverty, and parents have to work multiple jobs. So we have to make sure to enhance that funding, give flexibility K through 12, and then higher ed, whether it's 2-year community college or 4-year degrees. We have to have flexibility there too, funding especially for those who are coming from lower income backgrounds. The federal government has a huge role to play there, We have to make sure that we do away with some of the rigidities that weren't working, but continue to drive change through education very much at the federal level.
Bryan Townsend, Democratic Party candidate for U.S. House, we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And you can find all of our candidate conversations online at delawarepublic.org and delawaredebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped here at Delaware State University and are part of Delaware Debates 2016, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication and with support from AARP. Thanks for watching.